Jacob's eyes widened in terror as the figure came closer, and I could feel the tension radiating from him like a furnace on the brink of eruption. The shadows that enveloped the dark stranger seemed to pulse, alive with a threatening energy, and I felt a shiver race down my spine. A word formed on my lips, but my voice faltered, the air thick with the intent of something sinister. "You were warned," the specter hissed, his voice like sandpaper scraping against my ears. There was a chilling familiarity in his tone, a reminder of accusations I had allowed to slip into the recesses of my mind. "You thought your quest for truth would come without costs." With a flick of his wrist, the artifact in my pocket vibrated violently, its surface tinged by an ominous darkness that made my heart race. I looked at Jacob, his face pale, torn between the instinct to flee and an overwhelming need to protect. "We have to get out of here," he urged, his voice urgent. But just as panic threatened to take hold, a flicker of something caught my eye, a small light emanating from the old man, glowing gently in contrast to the dark energy approaching. It pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, a beacon in the overwhelming storm. "Stay," he commanded, a fierce strength infusing his words that momentarily quelled my impulse to run. "We have faced worse than him. Remember the stories I shared with you both? It's not just him," Jacob said, his hands shaking as he pulled me closer to him. "This is about what you think you want to uncover. You have no idea how far the consequences reach." Before I could process his warning, the figure thrust an arm forward, its shadow swallowing everything in its path. "Foolish children," he spat, contempt dripping from his voice. "You yearn for understanding, but your ignorance has already set you into a web from which there is no return." I could see the dark currents swirling around him, a vortex of despair that seemed poised to sweep us all away. Trembling with conviction, drawing closer to him as despair threatened to unravel the fragile connection we'd forged through pain. "What is it that makes us so ensnared?" But before he could answer, a deafening crack echoed through the air, a veil tearing apart. I staggered back, feeling the ground shift beneath our feet. The figure's menacing laughter echoed in the night, mingling with the dark forces swirling around Yuzand. In that instant, everything changed. Darkness burst forth as the artifact erupted, cascading lights spilling over everything, illuminating fractured pieces of our past, transforming them into a tapestry of truths that danced like fireflies in the night. And with that light came a clarity, a torrent of understanding shocking and exhilarating. Just as I was beginning to comprehend, the world shifted again, and the shadows receded for but a heartbeat. Then, the ground beneath Jacob trembled violently, and he slipped, his hand grasping for mine. "Help me," he cried, and the rawness of his plea shattered my heart. I reached for him, but the chasm widened, drawing him away. Both of us swept into a current I was terrified to follow. In that suspended moment, I realized the threads of our past were unraveling, and I was left teetering on the precipice of everything I thought I knew. I would either embrace what lay ahead, or I would lose him forever. As the light and darkness collided, my union with Jacob trembled with uncertainty, and the weight of choice bore down upon me. The abyss yawned wide, daring me to leap into the unknown. "Don't let go," he yelled, but I could see the specter drawing closer, the truth lurking with grim fruition. And just like that, the illumination waned. A darkness swept over us both, and in the last fleeting moment, I caught sight of the old man's face, stricken, resolute, yet unyielding. The weight of fate was shifting again, and I was left gasping for breath at the edge of my choices, poised on the brink of something that could change everything. The rain began to lighten, but the heaviness in the air lingered, thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The shadows pulsed and flickered around us, a constant reminder of the choices yet to be made and the pain still to be confronted. I stood there, trembling as the figure of my mother, this ghost from my past, loomed ever closer, her face twisted in a fusion of love and despair. "Mom?" I whispered again, my voice trembling on the brink of disbelief. Would this truly be the moment I could finally connect with the woman who had molded my early years, yet had been swept away without explanation? The tempest barely contained rage, as if the mere thought of openness threatened their very existence, poised to stifle our light. "Hold on," Jacob bellowed, wrapping his arms around me as the winds howled, pulling us into a collective darkness. I felt the surge of a million unresolved feelings bubbling up, threatening to engulf me, to drown me in regret, bitterness, and guilt. But the sudden squeeze of Jacob's hand against my back anchored me. His warmth coursed through me like an electric current. In that instant, I found my voice amidst the turmoil. "I forgive you," I said, addressing my mother, each word becoming a lifeline. "I forgive you for leaving, for the pain I've felt. And I forgive myself for not learning to understand." Thunder clapped ominously above. The shadows writhed violently, as if threatened by the spoken truths, their grip tightening with a ferocity that left me gasping for breath. But as pain surged through me, so did an electric clarity. Bright tendrils of light began to weave through the solid darkness, and with that flicker, I felt the presence of my mother resonate within me, a balm to the wounds of loss. But just then, from the edges of the shadowy abyss, I heard an echoing voice, one I had not expected to hear again. "You shouldn't have done that," it growled, cloaked in an assertive malice. As I turned to face the source, my heart dropped into an abyss of dread. A figure I had thought tied to my memory, someone I believed lost, had emerged from the depths, eyes cold and heartless. "What have you done?" The figure sneered, an eerie smile spreading across a familiar face. It was a face that mirrored my own, drawn from years of hardened anguish. My father, who had vanished, leaving behind scars deeper than I was prepared to acknowledge. The merciless meteorological chaos amplified as shadows surged, swirling in anticipation. I felt the pull of terror grip my chest, forcing me to confront a truth more complicated than I had imagined. The storm howled, and my grip on Jacob tightened, his warmth grounding me as I stood braced for confrontation. The weight of my past looming larger than ever. Did I in that moment? The line between light and dark shifted, and I realized I was standing at the precipice not just of my own truths, but in the midst of tangled legacies that bound us all. And as the tempest roared to life caustically around us, the looming question began to settle heavily in the air. How would we weather the storm together, when the past bore so much pain, and shadows were tightening their fatal grasp around our destiny? In that moment, the tempest revealed the heart of my fears. My own reflection twisted in agony, a specter echoing the same despair I had fought so hard to escape. It was me, the girl I had tried so desperately to leave behind, shrouded in shadows of regret and pain, suffocating beneath the weight of expectations and unfulfilled dreams. My heart ached as the realization struck. This was not just my father's struggle, but mine too, a legacy woven intricately between generations, binding us in ways I had yet to comprehend. "Help me," the figure myself whispered, a sorrowful plea that tore through the storm. "I am lost. I don't know how to break free." Each word felt like a dagger, slicing through my resolve, and I stumbled forward, grappling with the tumultuous emotions that crashed over me like waves against jagged rocks. "I won't abandon you," I promised, my voice breaking with a relentless surge of compassion. "You deserve to be seen, to be heard." I reached out, trembling, and as my fingertips brushed against the shadows that draped her form, the darkness rippled, momentarily revealing the rawness of my own buried emotions, the fury at my father for leaving, the guilt for not understanding my mother's pain, the fear of inheriting a legacy steeped in grief. "Embrace it," I shouted against the storm, my heart igniting with a fierce determination. "You are more than just your fears. You are not alone." The shadows writhed, shifting as if caught off guard, and for the first time, I could see the humanity within that familiar figure. The girl I had feared would always haunt my dreams. That as our hands connected, a torrent of energy surged through me, ebbing and flowing, resurrecting memories I had buried deep. Pain intertwined with love, resentment shifted to acceptance, and I realized that confronting the intertwining currents of losses was a path to freedom. "Together, we can rewrite our story," I declared, feeling the shadows beginning to recede, darkness folding into itself like a withered flower. The howling winds quieted, and the storm grew gentler, as if it too recognized the power of the sincerity rooted in our connection. Anchored, our fears for so long faded into a gentle rain, each drop carrying a promise of a new beginning. Finally, standing together, I faced my parents not as a frightened child bound by absence, or as a reluctant adult paralyzed by grief. I stood there as someone who had weathered storms and emerged transformed. Someone who could create a love rooted in understanding rather than pain. Let's forge a new legacy, I urged, the burden now a lightness in my heart. One worth passing on. As the rain pattered softly around us, I felt pieces of the past dissolve, swept away in its wake, leaving behind only the residue of love and acceptance. The road ahead was unwritten, but as we turned toward the dawn, I knew we could face whatever lay ahead together. And as I stepped forward, I whispered the words that had long remained unspoken, the final embrace of love transcending time. I forgive you. I forgive myself. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The weight of our pasts had lifted, and for the first time, I finally felt whole. As sunlight broke through the lingering clouds, bathing us in warmth, I understood that healing blooms in the light of truth even in the face of darkness. Embracing each other, we watched the horizon as it stretched toward eternity, hopeful of new beginnings. Each breath a promise for the future where shadows once haunted us. Now stood the pillars of hope. In the end, I realized, our bond had never truly been about the pain we carried but the courage to transform it into something beautiful. And as I took my first step into this new dawn, I felt an indescribable weight lift off my heart, a weight that whispered, "We are free at last."